I'm Dr. Robin Koslowitz, YouTube's post-traumatic parenting expert. Have you ever said to yourself, I hope my damage doesn't damage my children? Good parenting wasn't modeled to me, so I lack the maternal instinct, the paternal instinct to give my children a healthy childhood. Or my childhood was okay, but the recent events of my life have really left me depleted. Then you belong here. Welcome to the post-traumatic parenting community. If you like this video, please click on the subscribe button below so you don't miss a single episode. Let's face it, after COVID, we are all post-traumatic parents now. Today, I'm responding to a DM from a post-traumatic parenting community member who wants to know what's so bad about the egg crack challenge. Why am I taking such a strong stance against it? Like, can't we all live a little? What's wrong with making a joke? Why is it such a big deal? This is a snowflake generation and everything's a big deal nowadays. So first of all, just in case you thankfully missed this trend, egg crack challenge is a TikTok trend where parents crack an egg on their toddler's head and then film the reaction and laugh about it on YouTube. It really initially started as a spouse challenge or a friend challenge, which can be a joke and can be funny if you're kind of into that, where, you know, a spouse is offering to make another spouse, I don't know, an omelet or something, and then when she goes to crack the egg, she cracks it on her husband's head and he gets startled and she cracks up into the camera. And that can be good-hearted fun, especially if it's a family that prank each other all the time. But I have been seeing egg crack challenge being done on children as young as 2. So let's understand how a child's brain works when they're relating to their parents and why so many members of the post-traumatic parenting community are having such a visceral sense of like, no, this is bad. Some people are even saying it's re-traumatizing them, it's triggering them. Let's understand why. So when I'm 2, right, my parent is what Jean Piaget, who's the kind of the originator of cognitive psychology, would call the more knowledgeable other, right? I'm 2. I don't know much about the world. What I know is I have a mommy and I have a daddy, and they know everything about the world. So this is a good thing because they will tell me when something is safe and when something is dangerous. The whole origin of attachment theory really is about a survival system, right? I basically want to know in attachment theory, is my mom there? Is she attentive? And is she going to protect me and come and soothe me if something goes wrong? And the reason for the attachment system is survival, right? If we have a human baby who is in danger, suppose there's a forest fire, right? If there is a baby, horse, a colt, right? A baby bunny that's pretty young, a day or 2 old, and the fire comes, that animal already has the capacity to run away, right? So if there's a fire and I am a 4-day-old baby bunny, I can run, right? If I am a human baby and there's a fire and my mom is not right there, I'm out of luck, right? So therefore we have an attachment system. The attachment system is meant to keep us alive, right? So our attachment system primes us to pay a lot of attention to our parents and for them to want to pay a lot of attention to us. And that, in a lot of ways, is the origin of learning, because one of the hallmarks of attachment is a property called attunement. Attunement means my brain, my baby's brain, and you, mommy brain, are on one wavelength. We're like sort of in sync. And researchers can actually measure attunement using functional near-infrared spectroscopy, which is like it's a mouthful, but it's a test that measures if brain waves are syncing up. So there are really ways that they can measure if a brain is syncing up with another brain. And when a mother and a child are syncing up, and we've felt that, right? You're hugging your baby and he's hugging you, and you're cuddling the baby, and the baby's just looking up and thinking like, this is my mommy. And the mommy's looking down and thinking, oh, what a delicious baby. And that is attunement. And attunement also primes us to learn, because if you think about the best lesson you've ever taken, like the best, edutainment video you've ever seen, where like you had that teacher and you were just like at the edge of your seat thinking about what they're going to say next, and they were like totally dialed in. That's that sense of attunement. Like our brains are one, and that's how we learn. So Piaget said that our brains are attuned to learn from a more knowledgeable other, right? A more knowledgeable other can be a parent. That's our first more knowledgeable other. A more knowledgeable other can be a peer, like another kid who figured it out, right? How many kids like see a kid climb up the steps to the slide, and then they're like, oh wait, I can try that, and then they climb up the steps to the slide, right? A more knowledgeable other could be an older child, a sibling, but our primary more knowledgeable other is our parent, right? And so think about what happens. A baby's diaper is wet, and the mother looks down at the baby and says, oh, your diaper is wet, you were so sad, okay, we're gonna change your diaper, almost done. And then the baby's diaper is changed, and the mother picks the baby and says, all clean now we feel better, right? So the mother is giving the child some vocabulary to understand it. She's reflecting the sensation back to the child, and the child starts learning and understanding. The child falls down, he scrapes his knee, mom says, oh, your knee got bloody. So now I have a new concept called blood. Ouch, okay, we're gonna wash it off, we're gonna put on a band-aid, okay, and the mother's like hugging the child, and eventually the child goes and toddles off to play. That's attunement, that's attachment, that's keeping the child safe, and it's also learning from a more knowledgeable other about the world. So a child's brain is primed to learn from their parent, right? So we have this 2-year-old, and mom says, we're gonna bake cookies. 2-year-old's super excited. I'm learning this new thing from mom called baking cookies. Never did this baking cookies thing before. Cool. Or even, oh yeah, we baked cookies before. That was fun. And then the cookies were yummy. Kid climbs up onto the bar stool really happily next to mom and is like at the counter, and mom says, okay, I am gonna put in a cup of sugar and you put in a cup of sugar. I am gonna mix in some chocolate chips and you mix in some chocolate chips. And the kid's like, their brain and mom's brain is in sync, and this is setting the foundations for that child to be that interested, engaged, curious learner in first grade, in 7th grade, in college, in grad school, right? When that kid wins the Nobel Prize, he's gonna thank his mom saying, you taught me how to be a scientist when you baked with me when I was 2, right? But now it goes wrong because mom says, okay, time to crack the eggs, and she takes the egg and cracks it on her kid's head, and like, the kid's brain goes from attuned, attached, enjoyment, curiosity, learning mode to stress, hypervigilant, what just happened mode, right? Very quickly. And if you watch these videos, you see these children, they either yell and hit the mom, which is fight response, right? They get mad and they hit back. They, in their startlement, they throw things, right? Sometimes they curse, they yell, right? Some children topple off the chair, which is just so sad, or run away, right? And then there are the kids where it's really sad, where they just freeze in shock, right? And they just don't even know what to do. They burst into tears. And, polyvagal theory really explains why we have those 3 responses, right? Where either we're like all systems go, we go into fight, we go into flight, or we go into freeze, right? So the child now has learned that attuned, curious, joyful learning state. Now their brain has encoded that as dangerous, right? So they learned something about the world, which is that people can bully you. And it's really sad when what we learn about the world is that the people who can bully you are also called mom or dad or big sister, right? Because my first bully shouldn't be my mom or my dad, right? My mom or my dad, their job is to protect me from my first bully. When I come home from school and I say a bigger kid shoved me off the swings, mom and dad's response should be, oh no, that's terrible. Let's figure out what to do next time, right? This kid called me a mean name. Well, how should we answer him? The next time someone calls you shorty, what should you say back in response, right? And mom helps me, validates me, makes me feel better, and then gives me strategies and helps me figure it out. Mom should not be that first bully. When mom, instead of attending to her child's distress, cracks up and winks at the camera, the child learns that it's dangerous to be innocent. It's dangerous to be naive and vulnerable. The child starts hating the naive and vulnerable parts of themselves. And In IFS, internal family systems, this might be the origin of some of the dramatis personae inside their character, right? Some of the pieces of their character. Maybe they now start developing this like tough attitude where like they're not going to take anything from anyone because like no one's going to push me around. They're going to lose that innocence that we are so sad when our children lose, right? Because they don't want to ever be bullied again. And that's really scary too. There are so many things in the world that interfere with our attachment to our kids, our phones, our stress, our work life, their lives, their interests, they're busy with like extracurricular activities, their friends, stuff that's happening in the news. It's a lot that can interfere with our attachment. Do we really want to introduce something that we didn't need to by being our child's first bully, by making them distrust us just a bit? I also think there's, shades of reality here, because it's very different doing the egg challenge on a 2-year-old and doing the egg challenge on a 35-year-old, right? So if your kid's 15, 16 and pranks are the way you communicate in your family in a friendly, cute way, I think it's a very different conversation than if your child is 2, where they really do depend on you, trust you, need you. Some people were saying how the child is not necessarily being exploited, and the parent, and like maybe it benefits the child for the parent to have a big YouTube following or TikTok following or whatever. The problem is, and a lot of parents mentioned that like they ask their kids permission before posting the video. But do you honestly know many 2-year-olds who can be like, yeah, no, mom, I'm not really comfortable with that? Right? Or a 6-year-old. 6-year-old needs mom for a lot of things, right? 6-year-old wants that really cool Hello Kitty backpack for first grade. 7-year-old really wants that cool new bike, right? 10-year-old really wants to sleep over by his best friend over the weekend. So it starts becoming this tit for tat relationship where the child consented, but did they really consent? Are they even capable of consent? Will they be embarrassed about it later, but then it's too late? Like, this is like an iffy place where personally I don't show my children's faces on social media, but that's kind of an iffy place, particularly when it's humiliating them in a prank. And like I said, 16-year-old child is very different than 2-year-old. I'm not saying it's good to do it with a 16-year-old either. It's not something I personally would do, but I think from developmental levels, it's different. I had a few people message me on Instagram saying that this is a snowflake generation, that they were pranked as kids, their parents used to pull tricks on them, and it was fine and it was great. And I have a point to make about that. If the prank went wrong, where was the parent's attention? Was the parent's attention on the phone, winking and giggling into the camera for TikTok followers, or was their attention immediately on the child? Because if your attention is on the phone, you're not attending to the child, right? So yeah, maybe a 45-year-old woman, her dad used to prank her as a kid, but there was no social media back then. If the prank went wrong and she didn't want it, shown, let's say it was on a home movie or something, and she didn't want it shown, would her father respect her wishes, right? If it went wrong, was he there and attentive and caring? And everybody who I asked that to all said, yeah, that's very different. You're right. And it's true. I don't remember ever being pranked when I was 2 years old. So yes, right, there are levels here, and there are things that are different. 2-year-olds are too young to understand the concept of a joke. They don't have the ability to read someone else's mind and say, oh, it was a joke, right? Very often, small children are afraid of clowns, or they're afraid of things they see on TV. They don't have a great line between fantasy and reality. And we have to explain to them, right? Like, that's not really blood, or yes, it's true that Bugs Bunny can get run over by a truck, but if you run in the middle of the street, you will not just bounce back up and be fine, right? Children don't understand that. So they can't understand a joke either at such a young age. What they do understand is, mommy, the person I'm primed to learn from, just bullied me. That was scary. I'm crying, but mommy's cracking up. Right? That's the opposite of attunement. Our brains are at 2 completely different wavelengths. And that interferes with attachment and attunement, especially if it happens too often, especially if it happens with no attention to the child's distress. Do we really want to do that? And for those people who say, no, it's still fine, it was just a joke, people take these things too seriously, this kind of thing was done to me when I was a kid and I'm fine. Well, you're somebody who would crack an egg on your 2-year-old's head, laugh about it as they're crying, and then post it on the internet. I'm sorry, you can be fine. One day, if you decide to break that cycle, you will be fine. But right now, you're not fine.